Hello guys, welcome to Bhavna's Online Academy. So today we are going to see the chapter number 6, Functional Level Strategy. It's a really simple chapter. Also we have free SM classes running on this channel. Chapter number 1 and 4 have been already uploaded. I'll give the link of the SM playlist in the description box below. Do check it out also. So yes guys, let's start with the video. And oh yes guys, good morning. So today we are going to continue with our functional level strategies. So we have already completed our marketing strategy, okay? And we have left other 4 to 5 strategies we have. Those are not as big as marketing strategy. So quickly we'll be able to complete all of them, okay? So I hope to complete it sooner than I have planned. Let's see how it goes. Yes. So first we are going to start with financial strategy. We are going to start with, just a second. Okay. So we are going to start with financial strategy. So what is financial strategy? What is finance? Okay. Good morning. Yeah. So what is finance? Finance means nothing, but it is related to your money. Finance means nothing, but it is related to your money. Okay. So the prime, what do you say? The prime function in an organization is the financial function. Because everything in a organization is some or the other way related to money. Money is either required by everyone. Okay, it is needed by everyone. So if you take production function, they need money to procure something. If you take a sales function, to make the sales, they might need some money. Then for marketing function to do advertising and all of that, they will need money. Then what else you have? You have your transportation function, in which to transport one thing from another, you need to pay to the truck driver or someone like that. So money is something which is required by everyone. Okay, so money is very each and every function is related to money. So only when the financial function, is managed properly and the finances are managed properly, the company will be able to survive. Before starting in, I'll give you an example. Okay, we all knew that this supermarket named as Subiksha. Quickly in the next 5 minutes, I'll tell you what happened with Subiksha. So just like how Reliance Precious or any other supermarket is, Subiksha also started as a supermarket only. Okay, it had everything, like how your Reliance Precious everything. That too had everything, and it was selling at the lowest of prices. People were very much attracted towards Subiksha because it was giving everyone a very good quality, plus it was also selling goods at very less price. Okay, so what happened with Subiksha was, Subiksha had a wonderful strategy, okay, and the implementation of all those strategies were also very good. But where the mistake was actually, okay, so the mistake where actually happened was that it happened in the financial function. So what happened was that when Subiksha as a supermarket, it started, right? It started around South India only. I am not sure where it exactly started. I suppose it is Tamil Nadu. I'm not sure. Okay, it started as a normal supermarket only, but then once it started gaining popularity, it started to expand itself. Okay, it started to expand, then it started to expand around South India, and then it started moving towards Northeast and all of that, and it started to do heavy expansion. Okay, so it nearly had 1,600 branches. I guess, if I'm not wrong, all over India. Okay, imagine the number of just a supermarket. This is the expansion only of a supermarket. 1,600 branches. Okay, so this was how huge Subiksha was. Okay, but what happened was that they had taken a what happened was that they started facing cash crunch. Okay, that they had also taken so much loan from outsiders that they had to pay in interest also, which they were not able to do properly, and also they started having severe cash crunch. So because of that, what happened, they had to shut down all these 1,600 shops. Even though customer, it was not like the shop started losing demand or anything like that.
the Subiksha supermarket had a huge demand. Okay, customers didn't want the Subiksha to close at all. They rather wanted to have it and wanted to go and buy from there only. But even though the shop had customer demand, due to a little mistake in the finance function of how they procured their funds and how they were managing their funds, there a mistake happened. And even though it had a very good demand in the market, and it could be the and it had the potential of being the number one supermarket, like how your what do you say, D-Mart is and all of that. It also had that potential, but due to a mistake in the finance function, all of the Subiksha chain had to close down. Okay, so this is the importance of finance function. Finance function in also even in Kingfisher also, they had a problem at the financial function area. They also had problem in strategy, but mainly they had problem at financial area. So Kingfisher had to also close down. So this is the importance of finance function. Okay. So, some examples of finance function are that what you do in a finance function. So if you are running a finance department, if you are the head of, suppose we all are the members working in the finance department, and there is one head, there is one finance manager. So what are we going to do in our finance department? What will be a job is what we are going to understand here. The first thing will be that what you do in a finance, so we all will prepare a strategy, right, for a department. In that strategy, there are a few decisions that we will take. So in that strategy, there are a few decisions that we'll take. The first decision is that from where I'm going to raise my capital. Okay, so the company definitely needs money. The company definitely needs money. So you all, as all of you know, that the company can either get money in the form of equity shares or preference shares or a long-term debt, or what do you say, your short-term debt, that is your creditors and all of that. Long-term example, bank loan, other loan, and all of that. Okay, so from where are we going to raise money or raise capital for our company is one important decision of finance department. The second important decision is that whether we, it's happening from yesterday. Okay, yeah. So second important decision is that whether we are going to lease or buy fixed assets. So I hope you guys know what is leasing. Leasing means nothing but it's like renting only. Okay. So you have to decide whether you want to buy the fixed assets or whether you want to, if this decisions and all, if you guys would have read your financial management paper very well, these and all, this is nothing but your financial management paper only. All the chapters that we do there, the same only they have given us example here. Okay. Then you have a determination of dividend. So finance department will only decide how much dividend do we have to give to our shareholders. They'll also divide them. They also decide the time of accounts receivable. Accounts receivable means if you are going to give money to some kind of a creditor, or if you are going to have some kind of a goods creditor or anyone, in how much time are we going to collect money from them? Do we have a credit period of 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? We have to decide that. Okay. Then the amount of cash that should be kept on hand. So you also have to decide how much liquid cash you will have, how much cash you'll have in the bank, how much cash are you going to invest in other assets or anything like that. So these are some examples of financial functions, that financial strategy that you have to take. Okay. So what they have said here is that, so for a company to run, for a company to basically run, you need to have, you need to acquire some kind of a capital. You need to have capital or money in the business for the business to run. So where can you, so these are the funds that you will need. So from where can you raise these funds? What are the sources of funds? From where and all you can source your funds? So, either your money can come from your net profit. Okay, so if you earn profit, you will get money, or you will get capital in your business. That is one way. But the two basic sources of funds are either equity or debt. So the two basic sources of funds are either equity or debt. So you guys know how important deciding how much equity or debt in your company is. That is very important. Okay, now you guys tell me, if you start a company, okay, if you start a company, in what ratio will you ideally have your equity and debt? So if you are going to start a company, in what ratio will you have your equity? How much equity will you have in comparison with your debt? What is the ratio that you should ideally maintain? What is your equity debt ratio that you should ideally maintain? Equity debt ratio. Are you guys sure of what you answered? See, this is why, this is why half of you lose marks in the exam and then blame it on ICI. What did I ask? I asked you equity debt ratio. I didn't ask you debt equity ratio. Just because you have read something in the book, that doesn't mean the same answer you have to go and warm it up in the exam and come. Yeah, now you guys have changed. Very good. And for all those who have answered it as 2:1, take this as a learning. I asked you equity is to debt, not debt is to equity. Okay. So what they ideally say is that your equity debt ratio must be 1:2. That means if you are having a equity of 1 lakh in your company, maximum debt that you can have in your company is only up to 2 lakh. You must not have debt more than that. Okay. So this is the ratio that you should usually maintain. So what will happen if you have a lot of debt in your organization? Sometimes it may happen so that you're not able to earn profit at all in the business. Okay, so if you're not able to earn profit in your business, what will happen is that debt, if you're going to take a loan or something from someone else, there is a definite rule that whether you earn profit or not, you will have to definitely pay interest on it. You will definitely have to pay interest on it. So if you're not able to earn profit in such cases, interest is like a charge on profit. Whether you earn it or not, you have to pay. So that will be a very bad situation for you. Okay, so it is very vital for a success of a firm or a success of a strategy that you must decide whether you should have fully equity or fully debt. So having fully equity also, few company does not take it as a good sign. Whereas if you see, so this time in the what was that AGM of Reliance Industries this year, so they told they had announced that Reliance Industries, so Reliance Industries has totally become a debt free organization. That means they do not have any amount of debt. Okay, they only have the whole of equity and all of those components. So Reliance Industries this year, it has become a debt free organization. That means there is no charge on profit that they have to pay in terms of interest. Okay, so this is how you acquire your capital. Okay, so for implementing some kind of a strategy, so if you have a strategy to start a new product, for implementing such strategy, you need to acquire capital. How are you going to acquire capital? That is what you have seen in the sources of funds. So from where and all you can source your capital? It can either be debt or it can be equity, or there are many other way. Okay, here it is written. Right, there's some examples here. Okay, so I'm not able to see. Okay, so other than equity and debt, you can also have creditors. You can also take a short-term loan and all of that. Okay, so not only debt and equity, but those are the two main. What do you say? One second. So those two are the two basic sources of fund. Okay. So next, what they have written is the strategies related to the sources of fund are important. Why are these important? That how much fund you must take from one. See, suppose if I only have 50,000 equity in my company and 5 lakh rupees debt, that would be a huge burden on me. Okay. So whereas for equity, when you're going to pay the dividend, that is not going to be a charge on profit. It is dependent on you whether you're giving or not. Only if you earn profit, you are going to give dividend on equities. That is a plus there. Okay, so strategies related to the sources of funds are important since they determine how financial resources will be made available for the implementation of strategy. So if you have some kind of a strategy in the business, if you have some kind of a strategy in your business, if you want to develop a new product or bring changes in the packaging or bring changes in the design or bring changes in the distribution channel in which you're distributing, you will definitely need money for that. So if you only have a good decision about from where you're going to get funds for your company, you will be able to provide such funds to the people who are in need in your company. Okay, so organizations have a range of alternatives regarding the sources of funds. So while one company may rely on external borrowings, other may follow a policy of internal financing. Okay, that is what I've told you. Okay, so I hope that topic is clear. Next, what you have is projected financial statements or budgets. So what is projected financial statements? So projected financial statements means what companies do, these companies prepare a projected financial statement is that you guys, what you do is in the future, how your company is going to be, you try to project it in a financial statement. So you usually, we guys would have heard that we prepare financial statement for the current year which has ended or something like that. But there are a few companies, or there are many companies, which prepare projected financial statements that today, what year is going on, 2021, okay, financial year 2021 is going on. So in this financial year of 2021, what I'm going to do is I'm going to predict my future and do a predicted financial statement or a projected financial statement which will show my future. So here, standing today, I'm going to do a financial statement, like I'm going to predict how my financial statement is going to look in the year 3031. Okay, so when I'm going to prepare a financial statement for my future, that is predicting my future, that will be known as a projected financial statement. Okay, so projected financial statement is a central strategy implementation technique because it allows an organization to examine the expected results of various actions and approaches. So suppose today I have taken some kind of a major decision. Okay, when Reliance Industries took a major decision of starting something known as Jio, or they have taken a decision of bringing 5G into the world. So when they take such major decisions, they'll prepare a projected financial statements and see. That means, so if today I'm going to bring a new product in the market, how my financial statements is going to look 10 years later. It is going to look like the best financial statements that you can ever present, or is my company going to go crash down, and is my financial statements going to look really bad? Okay, so that is what I'm going to see. I'm going to project my financial statements, that is, I'm going to predict it, and I will see. So it is very important for something to get implemented, for a strategy to get implemented for a strategy to be implemented in your company. This projected financial statement is very important, because if you're going to implement something, you want to know what the consequences you're going to face. Okay, so that this financial statement shows your consequences. Okay, it is just like if you become a CA, you're going to see how much salary you're going to earn and all of that. Then only you decide to be a CA. Okay, so most of you might have only come for the money that this CA industry is going to give you. Okay, because there is a good demand for chartered accountants. Yes, so when you implemented the strategy of becoming CA, you first examine that if you're in the future, how your financial statement is going to do. That whether you're going to have a house, whether you're going to have a car, or whether you're going to have nothing and you'll be left with zero amount of money. So this is nothing but projected financial statement. Okay, so after you also, that is one way which is going to help in the strategy implementation. So another thing, there is something known as budgets. There is something known as budgets. So whoever has read cost accounting, they would have known what is budget. So budget means nothing. One second. Yes. Yeah. So budget means nothing but what your dad and mom does. Okay. So if your dad or mom, so then in between the two of them, one will be your finance manager at your home. So between your dad and mom, one person will be the finance manager in your home. What your dad or mom does is that when they receive salary, it's not like that. If they are suppose receiving a salary of 50,000, your dad is receiving a salary of 50,000. It's not like that, that your dad will come to your home and just give you 10,000, give your mom 10,000, your brother 10,000, and he'll have 10,000 for household work, and 10,000 he'll have for himself. This is not how they do. Okay, it's not like they are lavishly spending all the money. They always have a plan on how they are going to spend the money. If they are going to get the money on first of every month, they will have a plan until 30th of every month or 31st of every month. How am I going to spend this money? Where and all am I going to spend this money? How much electricity bill will I have to pay? How much my car service or bike service charges I'll have to pay? How much is I'm going to get from the place where I have invested? So all of this are included in a budget. So budget is nothing but it is a document. Budget is nothing but it is a document. It will show you details, okay, on how you have got your funds for a specific period of time. For your inflow and outflow of funds for a specific period of time will be shown by the budget. Okay. So for like every, like how our finance manager of the, what do you say, finance person of the country comes and reads up the budget, okay, every year. So in that budget, they'll tell you whether the prices are going to go up of petrol or not, and all of that, okay. So it is detailed on how the funds will be obtained and spent for a specific period of time. So that is what your budget is. So suppose if your sister's marriage is going to come in 5 years, your dad is going to see that how much outflow of funds is going to be there. So according to that, I need to have inflow of funds. So whether will I invest somewhere and get my money, or whether will I borrow my money, or whether will I work hard, okay. So what are the different types of budgets that you can have? So common types of budgets include cash budgets. So you can have budgets related to cash, your operating budget, your sales budget, profit budget, factory budgets, capital budget, expense budget, divisional budget, variable budget, flexible budget, fixed budget. Okay, so these are the different kinds of budgets that a company can have. So what are the different kind of budget that a student can have? So he can have a budget for his canteen expenses and all of those things. He can have a budget of how much is he going to spend with his girlfriend or with his friends. I can also have a budget on how much I'm going to gain from somewhere. If I'm into stock market, how much am I going to gain from there? How much I have spent there? Also, if I want to buy some laptop or mobile or something, that I'll have a budget. Okay, that up to this amount only I'm allowed to spend. Okay, under this budget only until this amount I am allowed to spend. So if I'm going to buy a phone, I'll have a budget of say 20,000 or 30,000, and under that budget only I will have to spend. So that keeps my finances in place. Okay. So what are the limitations of financial budget? So what are the limitations of budget? Okay, so you're going to see what is the budget. So what are the, so now you have seen what is budget actually. Now you're going to understand what is the minus of budget. If you're going to have a budget in a company, what are the minus, what are the negatives of it, what are the limitations? Okay, so what they say is that their budgets are usually so detailed that they are cumbersome and and overly expensive. Okay, so what they are trying to say is sometimes you have budget, okay, you have so detailed budget that what happens is that your company's employees will have to go by that budget only. Suppose we'll take example of ourselves. Okay, suppose now I have a budget of 10,000. Okay, suppose now I have a budget of 10,000. In that budget of 10,000, I have decided that I'm going to get a phone for 7,000. I'm going to get a case for 5,000, my mobile case for 1,000, suppose. Okay, I'm going to get my mobile case for 1,000 rupees. Then I'm going to buy a screen protectant for 500 rupees. Then for the remaining money, okay, for the 1,500 that is remaining, if I'm correct, yeah. For that amount of money, I'll buy some earphones. Okay, so if this is the budget that I have 7,500, I won't mind in spending that 500 or 1,000 rupees extra. Okay, I will reduce the cost from somewhere else. Maybe I'll buy panel for my phone for a 500 rupees rather than 1,000 rupees. So this is something which is okay when you are an individual, but when you are working in terms of, 1 second guys. Yeah, okay. So when you're working this in terms of company, so company, if they have something which is known as budget, that is usually fixed only. So that is usually fixed only because the budget is not prepared by the functional level people usually, okay? It is prepared by the business level or people like that. So the functional level will have no contact with them. So if there is an employee in the company, okay, and the employee is related to production sector or procurement, the employee is related to procurement segment or division function. So if the employee said that he has to buy the raw materials which are needed under 10,000 rupees, he'll have no other go than to buy raw materials for 10,000 rupees. Even though the quality is not good and he'll get a quality by just giving 100 rupees or 200 rupees extra, he still cannot give that because obviously he's not going to spend his own money. Okay, So he has to go by the budget. So when you have such budgets which are very detailed in nature, that becomes overly expensive and cumbersome. That means it becomes difficult to get adapted to it. Okay. Also, over or under budgeting can cause problems. I've told you that now what the over budgeting or under budgeting can cause. So sometimes what can happen is that your objective will be to provide the best quality to the customer. Your objective will be to provide the best quality to the customers. But when you're providing the best quality to the customers, when that is your end goal, what happens is that in your budget, if you do not have space for quality raw materials, good quality raw materials, your end product is definitely not going to be that good of a quality. So sometimes what happens is, because of the budgets that you have, your end product might also get affected. So your budgets become a substitute to your goals. Your goal is to give a good quality end product, but because you have a budget like this, yeah, it becomes a substitute. Okay, so becomes a substitute for objectives. The budget is a tool and not an end itself. Okay, so a budget, you must always use it as a tool only. You must not change the end goal for your budget. You can change your budget for your end goal, but never change your end goal for your budget. That is what they're trying to say. Next, they have told you that budgets uses. Okay, budgets uses as instruments of tyranny that result in frustration, retrenchment, absenteeism, and high turnover. To minimize the effect, managers should increase the participation of subordinates in preparing budgets. So just like the example I gave you, when an employee goes to buy raw material, right, difference from the procurement sector. So what happens is that, so this might create a lot of tension if he is going to think of buying a low quality raw material because of the budget restraints. What will happen is this will cause a lot of frustration because the end product is not going to look good. Then the corporate level team will only shout at you. Okay, so what they can do to minimize such things, is that the managers can increase the participation of subordinates. So the employees' participation, because employees are the people who are working at the day-to-day level and doing all the work. So they know what is available in the market better in terms of raw material and all of that. Okay, so you can also include such employees, so they help you in preparing the budgets. They'll tell you, no sir, no ma'am, if we include 100 or 200 rupees more in raw material, we'll be able to get better raw material. So these are the limitations of financial budget. Okay, so next is utilization of funds. Our meeting will also end in 7 minutes. Once it ends, you guys can join in. Okay, so next is the utilization of funds. So once you have got your funds in hand, once you have got your funds in place, now we are going to see how we are going to utilize such funds. Okay, so now once your mom and dad has given pocket money to you, you will see how you are going to utilize your pocket money. Okay, so rather than how you are going to get your money. Okay, so if I am there, I also run a business. Okay, and if suppose I also get pocket money from my parents. Okay, so in my business also I am earning good amount of money. I'm also getting a good amount of money from my parents. It is not important whether you're getting a little money or more money from someone or some way. It is important that how I'm going to spend my money. Suppose I'm getting 20,000 from my parents. Okay, suppose we'll take the example of pocket money. I'm getting 20,000 from my parents. I will take the example of business itself. So from my business, I'm earning 20,000 rupees, or by some kind of a capital investment or loan, I have got 20,000 rupees. It is not important whether I get 5,000 or 20,000 rupees. It is important how I'm going to spend it. So rather than what happened is that the 20,000 rupees, what I did was 15,000 rupees. I just started to play rummy and poker and all of that, and I lost my money in that, and 5,000 only I was able to utilize. Rather, if I only get 5,000 rupees, if I'm utilizing it in the best way possible, that is also good. So utilization of funds is very important. So plans for usage of funds deal with investment or asset mix decisions. So how can you utilize funds in a company? You can either use it in the day-to-day operations for your everyday operations. If you need money, that salary, those things, for procurement of raw material and all of that thing, you can use it for that. Or you can use it to invest in something. You can get investment decisions you have read in your financial management subject. Okay, so in that subject you must have read what is your investment decision, that what kind of assets are you going to acquire, in which shares are you going to invest, in which stock this thing you're going to invest. So all of that comes under utilization of funds. Okay, so that is also very important. So you can invest in your fixed assets, you can acquire something, current assets you can invest in, your loans and advances you can give your money to someone, then dividend decisions and relationship with shareholders. So all these only are given under this. Okay. Next, what you have is the various approaches for determining a business worth are grouped into 3 approaches. So I'll just give you introduction, then we'll end the meeting. So what they're trying to say is that if you have a finance function, okay, so if you have a finance function, in financial function, it is very important that, so today, how do you say that Ambani is one of the richest man in the world, or you're able to say that your Amazon's owner is one of the most richest man. You don't say usually he's the richest man or something like that. You rather say that the net worth of that person is really high. The net worth of the person is really high. Okay. So by how much I earn in my business will decide how much my business is actually worth. So how much I earn in the business or so now we are going to see how we are going to determine the net worth of a firm. So a net worth of a firm is really important. It will so if your firm is getting sold, it will get decided at what amount it can be sold. Your net worth is what is going to decide at how much your company is being valued, whether it is coming in the top 10 companies or top 5 companies or the first company in the world, or at what amount it has to be sold, or if there is some kind of investment that is coming in. So net worth as a concept is really important. I don't know how to explain it in detail, but I hope you guys must know what actually net worth is. So here we are going to study 3 approaches. Here we are going to study 3 approaches by which you can find what is the business net worth. So you might have heard, that this business net worth is so much of millions or so much of billions of dollars. So how do they decide what is the net worth of the firm? So if there are a few people, okay, so suppose there is J.K. Rowling, the person who is the author of Harry Potter. I suppose, I'm not sure. Okay, so this person, only author or what? So this person, this person has a certain amount of net worth to herself. Okay, so if Mukesh Ambani has a certain amount of net worth to himself, so this person is valued so much. Okay, so how do you decide that net worth? So if there is a business, how do you decide the net worth of the business is what we are going to see now. The 3 approaches of finding out net worth is what we are going to see now. Yeah. So how you can decide your net worth is that you totally have 3 approaches. So the first approach is what the first approach says is that you can determine your net worth using this using your sum of common stock, additional paid-in capital, and retained earnings. So what this means is that in the first method, how you can determine your business's net worth is that you have to take your balance sheet. What you have to do is you have to take your balance sheet. In the balance sheet, what you have to do is you have to take your paid up share capital. Okay, take your paid up share capital, your securities premium, and also your other reserves and surplus. Your paid up share capital, reserves and surplus, and other securities premium and other reserves and surplus. Add all of these 3. If you take a company's balance sheet, add all of these 3 things, and you have to do plus or minus your goodwill. Plus or minus your goodwill, and also plus or minus if you have some kind of undervalue or overvalued assets. So you have to either do add or minus the appropriate amount of goodwill and plus or minus the undervalued or overvalued amount of assets. So if you do a paid up share capital plus securities premium plus reserves and surplus plus or minus goodwill and plus or minus overvalued or undervalued assets, you will get the net worth of a firm. You will get the net worth of a firm. Okay. So this is one way. So that only they have written there. Sum of common stock. Sum of common stock means nothing but your paid up share capital. Additional paid in capital. Additional paid in capital means your securities premium. Retained earnings means other reserves and surplus. Okay. So I hope the first approach is clear. This is your first approach. Okay, so that was your first approach. So what is your second approach? So what is your second approach? In second approach, what they say is rather than taking your balance sheet and doing all of that, what you can do is you can take the current annual profit of the firm. You can take the current annual profit of the firm. So this year annual means yearly, how much your company has earned. Okay, what is their profit? So what you can do is you can do into 5. So you can do into 5 of the profit, and you can find out your net worth of the business. So current annual profit of the business into 5 will give your business net worth. So this is the second approach. Okay. So what is the third approach? So in this third approach, you have 3. In this third approach, you have 3 method. Okay. So in this third approach, how you are going to determine your business worth is that in this third approach, something called as market forces is going to be involved. Something known as market forces is going to get involved. So you have totally 3 methods. First method is that you have to see. There is, suppose we are trying to find out the business net worth of Flipkart. Suppose you are trying to find out the business net worth of Flipkart. Then what we can do is we have to search for a similar company like Flipkart. We have to search for a similar company like Flipkart. Suppose we have Amazon. Okay. So you have to see if you are going to sell Amazon. If you sell your Amazon, so what is the selling price of this similar company? So if you're going to sell Amazon, how much money you are going to get? So the selling price of your similar company is going to be your business net worth. So if the selling price of Amazon is, for example, I'm taking, okay, suppose it is 1 lakh rupees, then 1 lakh rupees is your Flipkart's net worth. Okay, it won't be so small and all. Okay, so that is one. Second approach is that you can do MPS by EPS. So price earnings ratio you can do and find out your company's net worth. So second, you can do this. Third, what you can do is that you can take your market price of the share. Okay. Yeah. So you can take the market price of the share. Okay. And once again, just a second, guys. Multiply the number of outstanding shares by the market per share and add a premium. Okay, so you have to do, so what you have to do is you have to take the number of shares that are in your company. You have to take the number of shares that are in the company right now, and you have to multiply it with the market per share. That market price, okay, you have to compare, you have to multiply it with the market price of the share, and then you have to add a premium in that. What is this premium about? So this premium means how much the person of the firm is willing to pay to get control over the other company. So how much other companies will pay to your company to get a control in your company? That is the premium amount. Okay. So up and above the market price, how much other companies are willing to pay in your company? So these are the 3 methods by which you can find the business net worth. I hope this is clear. Is this clear? Business net worth, is it clear? Okay. So now we have completed. Yes. So now we have. Is it goodwill? What is goodwill? Okay. So now we have completed the finance strategy. Okay. So now we have completed the finance strategy. The next thing what we have is the production or operation strategy. So production or operation strategy is that premium which you said. The premium which I said is the goodwill of the firm. Not mm, you can take it as how you can take it as extra. So if I am there, okay, if there is someone who replied me, so there is someone known as we'll take a name, someone known as Gopi. Okay, if he has a company and if I am willing to take control over his company or acquire his company. Take control means the major portion of the company. If I'm ready to take a control over or take a control or acquire the company, how much will I be able to willing to pay per share? His market per share right now is 20 rupees. Okay. But how much I be willing to pay? Okay, so that is the amount of not goodwill. Goodwill means a kind of image that you have built for yourself, not exactly goodwill. So, if how much am I ready to pay? Suppose that even though his market price of the share is 20 rupees, even though his market price in market price of a share reaches 50 rupees, I'll still be okay with paying 50 rupees. So that is the extra amount or the market price per share which the firm is willing to pay to get acquire or get control over the company. Okay. Okay, so next is a production strategy. So production strategy means everything which is related to production system and operational planning, control, logistic management, and all of that. So under production strategy, under production or operation strategy, you totally have three, I guess three. So you have your production system, then you have your logistic management, and then you have your one second. Sorry. Then you have your production. You have your production system. You have your operational planning and control. Then you have your logistics, and then you have your supply chain management. So these are the four parts that what we are going to study in a production or operation strategy. So these are the four parts. Okay. So after we complete this four parts, we next what we have is our R&D and human resource, and after that we'll end our class. Okay. Just a minute, guys. I'll take a minute's break. Yeah. I'll just go get water and be back. Okay, guys. So yes. So what were we seeing? Production or operation strategy. Okay. So again, we have written the strategy spelling wrong. There's a lot of mistakes this time in the book. Is it? Okay. So yeah. So first, what we are going to see about is the production system. So how your production strategy is what we are going to learn now. So what they say is that production strategy is concerned with the capacity, location, layout, product or service design, work systems, degree of automation, extent of vertical integration, and such factors. So when you make a strategy for your production system, so when you make a strategy for your production system, there are a few things or a few factors that you have to keep in mind or include in your strategy. So what are those factors is what we are going to see now. So when you are going to prepare a strategy related to production system, you must first decide what is the first related to factory. Okay, so if you're going to produce something, you're going to produce it in a factory or a place like that. So what will the factory capacity be? So what will the factory capacity be? So sometimes you might have heard, that the capacity of Indian government to the capacity of the Indian government to what do you say, to produce. So in this coronavirus situation, they told that the medicine of what do you say? What was that medicine of? Oh God, I just forgot. Some medicine is being exported to other countries. It is something related to malaria or not malaria. What medicine was that? Some medicine. Okay. So what the Indian government told was that so the medicine which they are going to produce in the country, they have a capacity of producing 2 lakh medicines in a month. So they have a capacity of producing 2 lakh medicines in a paracetamol, Covax. Covax. No, they had this. Yeah, there was this rumor, which was. I'm sorry, I'm not rumor. Rumor is not the right word to use. So they had this thing which was going on, in which they told, they were exporting this medicine. Not paracetamol. No, it was not paracetamol. There was some other medicine, I guess. If it is paracetamol, then you are right. I'm not sure. Okay. Yes. Okay. Some kind of medicine. Okay. So that is what is capacity. Hydroxy. Yeah. I think that was the one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was the one. Then if everybody is saying, then that was the one. So that was the medicine. Okay. So they were preparing it in India. That is, they're producing it in India and manufacturing. And exporting to other countries of the world. Okay, other parts of the world. So in that, they told that we have a production capacity of 2 lakh. 2 lakh. What do you say? 2 lakh medicines. Okay, in a month we'll be able to produce 2 lakh medicines. So that is the capacity. So how much a factory will be able to produce in a month or in a year is what is your capacity. Then there is factory location. So if you are going to start with a production strategy, you must decide where your factory location is going to be. In which part of the world are you going to have your factory? Suppose there is iPhone, okay, so and there are a lot of other firms which are working in the US. So what these people try to do is the US, I mean, sorry, there are a lot of US companies which are working in China. So now they are looking for an alternative factory location. In that alternative factory location, what they will decide is if they are switching on to some other country, switching up to some other country, they'll decide whether they are able to find everything that they need in the location. They'll need manpower, they'll need water, then they'll need in electricity, they'll need good electricity. Then all these things they are seeing if they have to set up a factory location, and they are finding that India, they are going to start up iPhone unit in Tamil Nadu. So in Tamil Nadu, they found that this location for the factory is the best. Okay, so that is the factory location. Then you have the factory layout, how you're going to have the layout of the factory. Then the product or service defined. So if you are going to produce a product, what is going to be the product or the service, how you're going to, what will be the design of the product. Okay, and the work system, how the work is going to happen in the production area. Then degree of automation, how much are you going to automate your process in the production system. Are you going to automate your or is it fully going to be labor intensive, or is it going to be fully mission intensive, or is it going to be the mix of both? If it is going to be the mix, what is the degree of mix, what is the degree of automation that you're going to have? Then the extent of vertical integration. So vertical integration means end product only. If you were suppose only the end product, if you are producing only the end product, are you going to produce now also, are you going to vertically integrate? If you would have joined me in the earlier chapters, you guys would have known what is vertical integration. Moving either up or down in the same product. That means raw material also will you start to produce, or if you are producing raw material, will the end product also you start to produce. So these are the decisions related to strategy which you have to take when you're preparing a production strategy. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Next, what you have is the operation planning and control. Okay, first one was production system. Now you are going to see production planning and control. So both of them, almost are quite similar only. So in this, what they try to say here is that you are going to take strategies related to aggregate production planning, material supply, inventory, cost, quality management, and maintenance of plant and equipment. So in production, I told you related to what things you're going to take. Make strategies. So here related to what things you're going to make is what is written here. First is regarding production planning. So how much are you going to produce? You have to plan that. Okay. Then material supply, from where are you going? If you are going to get your raw materials from somewhere else, how the materials is going to be supplied to your firm, from which seller are you going to get it? Then you have inventory. So inventory means something which is in stock in the firm already. Okay, so if you have a raw material stock, how are you going to manage it? Or if you have a finished goods stock, how are you going to manage it? Then you have the cost, how are you going to manage the cost? Because if you are going to store some kind of inventory in your factory, you will have a storage cost, you will have something known as storage cost. That cost, how are you going to manage? And quality management, so if you are going to produce something, that must be of a good quality. So that quality management, how are you are going to do? And then maintenance of plant and equipment, how you are going to do? So regarding all of these factors, if you are going to prepare a strategy, that will come under production or operations planning and control, and not in the production system. Okay. So if you ask me what the major difference is, I'll not be able to tell, because both are related to production level only. Okay. So one talks about how the production system should work. Okay. So how your factory must be at factory level, it talks, your production system talks about the factory level. Whereas planning and control also talks about factory level, but not the actual working. Okay. So there they talk about the actual working of the factory. Here they talk how materials are going. How do I tell you? Okay, once I complete this chapter, I'll try to differentiate it in detail. Okay. Okay. So that is one. So efficiently resources are utilized. That is the long-term objective. So here what your important aim in your planning and control is that you will see your main aim is that you have to see whether your resources whichever you have got, it must be utilized efficiently and optimally. Okay, so that will be your resource efficient use of resources, and that also you have to see your day-to-day operations, how your day-to-day operations are working, that also you have to manage. Okay, next what you have is your logistics management. So what is, okay, so logistics. So what is logistic? Logistics nothing means, logistic is nothing but it means transportation. So if you are going to so what happens is that for raw materials to reach into your factory, or for your end product to reach out of your factory, or for your raw material to reach to the place where your goods are going to get produced, all of this is related to logistics only. Logistics in simple terms would mean transportation. Okay, transportation. Okay, so what they have written here is that logistics is a process. Logistic, it's a process which integrates the flows of supply into, through and out of the organization, which integrates the flow of supply into, through and out of the organization. So what does this mean? Into, through and out of the organization. So if you're going to have some kind of a supply, that means if you're going to get raw material, that raw material, how is it going to come into your organization? Okay, so if the raw material is going to get converted into fixed finished goods, what is the logistics that you're going to use when it is going to get converted into raw material to fixed goods? So how is it going to move through your organization, and also how is it going to move outside your organization? That is, once the fixed goods are it's completely ready, how is it going to go and reach the public or the end consumer? So this is what is logistic management. So the flows of supply into, through and out of the organization. Okay, so to achieve a level of service which ensures that the, so why you do this logistic management? Okay, if you're just going to leave like that, suppose I don't have a logistics department in my what do you say, in my business or in my company. If I don't have a, suppose if I don't have a logistics management thing in my company, what will happen is sometimes what may happen is that I'll never know. Okay, I'll never know when I actually need my materials. So what this logistic department will actually do, if I have one, is that they will see what is my you would have read this in the costing chapter of materials. Just a minute guys, door close. Okay, yeah, 1 second, I'll just close the door and come. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, so if I have a logistic department in my company, you know what they will try to do is they will try to see if the right materials are available at the right place. So if I need a material, okay, so if suppose I need a material, if I'm a big bread manufacturing company, if I'm suppose I prepare wheat breads, okay, if I manufacture wheat breads, then the right material, what is my right material? Right material is that I must have the wheat at the right time, the kind of wheat which I need. So in wheat, so you might have high quality wheat, low quality wheat. So if I'm producing two kinds of bread, one is a high quality bread and a low quality bread, I must have the high quality wheat at the high quality bread production area and low quality wheat at the low quality bread production area. So right material must be available at the right place. That is the first thing logistic department will do. Then at the right time, it should not be like that I wanted to start my production by 10 a.m. but my materials are only coming to me by 10 p.m. So that must not happen. So at the right time it must be available, of the right quality. I already told you what right quality means, and also at the right cost. Okay, so that doesn't mean that if you're buying a material which is of high quality or paying extra for it, you must be able to find that what is the best cost, at what is the lowest and the best cost you can provide a good quality material to me. So this is what a logistic management do. It not only navigates, or it not only pushes your raw material to finished goods and tries to manage all the transportation of your goods into the company, through the company and out of the organization. but it also sees whether the right materials are available at the right place. Because if I don't have logistic management, if I don't have a good if I only have transportation, and if I don't have people who are managing my transportation, or who are people or who are managing my logistics, I'll not be able to have my right material at the right time, or at the right place, or at the right quality, or at the right cost. So if you only do moving in and out of the business, that will only be known as transportation. But transportation with these 5 rights, transportation with this 5 rights is what makes my logistics. Transportation with just transportation will be transportation, but what makes up my logistics management is that this transportation plus this 5 rights, that will make my logistics. I hope logistics is clear to you. Next, so these are the few questions which you can take related to logistics department, that you can give it a read afterwards. You'll understand. Then next, what they have told here is that you have a so there are some examples of how logistics can be help to a business. So if you have the best logistic department in your business, how is it going to help you is what is given in the 5 points. First is cost savings. So I will have the raw material at the right time to me. So it will not be like that all the manpower have already come by 10 a.m. All the people who are related to the manufacturing department have already come by 10 a.m. But the whole day is getting wasted because you are not able to get the raw material at the right time. In such case, what will happen is that the manpower which were sitting from morning to night, you will still have to give them salary. So that is the cost, extra cost to you. They didn't do any work today, but still they are paying them cost. So if you have the best logistic department in your business, it will do a cost saving to you. Then you have reduced inventory. Reduced inventory means you know how much material is required by which which department, you know how much is required at what time. So it must not be like that your store that then you will not have the problem of storing a lot of inventory and keeping. Okay, so you'll have a reduced inventory, by which your storage cost will also reduce. Then you have improved delivery time, so you know when your finished product is going to get completed, and when the stock in the supermarkets is going to get over. So if you know at what time the stock in the supermarket is going to get over, then only at the right time you will be able to know the time gap between. So if suppose you have a product that is getting manufactured by 5th of every month, and by 10th of every month in every supermarket your products get over, then between the 5 days how you are going to efficiently deliver it to the customer is also a part of logistic management. So you'll have improved delivery time, then that will create customer satisfaction, and that will also give you a competitive advantage, that you have a good delivery system and a good logistic system and all of that. Okay, so that is about your logistics. So we have already seen under production system, I told you there are 4. One is production system, then production planning and control we saw, then we saw logistics. Now what we are going to see is the supply chain management. So this is the last one in the production thing. Then we have 2 more other strategies. Okay, yes. So what is supply chain management? So what is supply chain management is that supply chains, like how I told you when I was when in my other chapters, that your strategic management is a big circle, in which strategic planning is a small circle. Strategic management is a big circle, in which strategic planning is a small circle. Remember I told you this as a difference for strategic management and strategic planning in the earlier chapters. So here what you have is, what is the difference between logistic and supply chain management is a doubt that will arise in everybody's mind. Okay, so supply chain management is a huge circle, in which logistics management is a small circle. So supply chain management is a huge circle, in which logistics management is a small circle. So that is the supply chain management is more broad, whereas logistic management is narrow. Okay, so then don't come up to me and ask what is the difference between supply chain and logistic management. That this is the difference I can tell you theoretically. Only when you go and experience a few things practically, you'll actually be able to understand the difference between the two. Okay, yeah. So where was I? So yeah, supply chain management. So what they are trying to say is that supply chain refers to the linkages between the supplier, manufacturers, and the customer. So if my company is a manufacturing company, so right from where I get my raw materials from suppliers and to where I give my finished products to my customers, it will create a link between all these people, between my suppliers, manufacturers, and the customers. So that is what supply chain usually does. So that is the meaning of supply chain. Chain means a chain of things. Your suppliers, manufacturers, and customers. Okay, so supply chain involves all activities like sourcing and procurement of material, conversion, and logistics. So it not only include logistics, that is how your material is going to come and go, but it also includes like from where are you going to get this material, from where are you going to source your material from, then the conversion area from raw material to fixed good, how is it going to get converted? And also your logistics, definitely. So all these things are included in your supply chain management. Okay. So the diagram that you are seeing here, that is nothing but what I told you is a big one is a supply chain management and a small part is logistic management. And I just drew it a little bad. Okay. So next, what they try to say in your supply chain management is that it is a cross-functional approach to managing movement of raw material into organization and the movement of finished goods out of the organization towards the end consumer who are satisfied as efficiently as possible. So supply chain is nothing but it is approach where you manage how your raw materials are going to come into an organization and how your finished goods are going to move out of the organization so that it reaches your end consumers on time and your end consumers are satisfied. So this is your supply chain management. It is approach where your movement starts from the point of origin to your point of consumption. So right from where it is starting, from where you procure your raw materials to where there is a point of consumption. So where your consumers buy those products. So from start to end, it totally includes your supply chain management. Okay. So here they have given you the difference between logistic management and supply chain management are both the same. Okay, this you can give it a read after we are done with the chapter. Okay, next what they try to say here is implementing supply chain management system. Okay, I'll take a 1 minute break here so your brain is able to process everything I've told you. So until this, are you guys clear? So until this, do you guys have any doubt? I know what this chapter is trying to tell you is a lot of things, but if you understand it, it will be easy. Okay, so once you give it a read, the important points, whatever I have marked, if you read after I have completed my chapter, then and there, if you read only, you'll be able to recollect everything. Okay, yes, it's clear. Okay, fine. I hope you guys don't have any doubt. My throat is paining, I'm shouting, so that's why I'm taking a break. Yeah. So what was I saying? Yeah. So now we are moving on to how much do we have more in this year? Only this. So this is the last topic in your logistic management. Then you have 2 more strategies. Yeah. So in your supply chain management. Yeah. So implementing supply chain management. So so this points, you can give it a read. I'll just quickly tell you easy points only. I don't want to waste much time on that. Rather than on the concept which you don't understand, I'll put more time in that. Okay. So how does your supply chain management works? First, you develop a product. Okay. So development of a product is never so development of a product is never included in logistics. Only in your product, only in your supply chain management, you have a product development also, which is included. So always see the difference. Okay. So you have a difference between logistics and supply chain management. Okay. So supply chain management, in that first what you do is you develop a product. Once you have developed your product, what you do is that you try to procure whatever raw materials is needed for the product. Okay. So suppose I have decided that I want to manufacture a mobile. So that is my product development. So I've decided to manufacture a mobile. So for that, whatever things I need, I'll procure it. Suppose I need some kind of a raw material or some kind of a technology or asset or anything like that, I'll first procure it. Okay. So that I'll do. So from the suppliers, I'll have to procure it, whatever raw material I need. So yeah, I'm again and again going into detail. Okay. So then you will manufacture your mobile. So then then what you'll do is you'll manufacture your mobile. Once you've manufactured your mobile, what you'll do is you'll physically distribute the mobile. You can either distribute the mobile via e-commerce or on retail store or on big stores or somewhere. You will decide your physical distribution channel. After you have decided your physical distribution channel, you will see if there is anything you want to outsource. Is there anyone who does not know the meaning of outsource? Okay, I'll tell you anyway. So what you'll do is there is something known as outsourcing. So in outsourcing, what you do is that a company will have a lot of things to do. A company will have a lot of things to do. It will also have to manufacture. It will also have to, pack it. It also have to look after the after sales services. It also has to look after the customer inquiries. Everything it has to look out. Okay. So what company can do is, if it is not able to look after all of these things, or if it does not want to do everything at one place, it can outsource a few functions. How in your example, we take the example of your house. In your house, your mom is there. Okay, your mom also has to cook. Your mom also has to go to the office. Your mom also has to do this. What do you say? Mopping your house and cleaning your house, and she also has to wash the clothes and all of that. There are a lot of things that your mom has to do. But what your mom thinks is that if she's going to do all the things together by herself, she'll not be able to do everything efficiently and at her best. So what she does is that she outsources her activities. She keeps a maid at her home. She keeps a maid at her home. So what she does is, what the maid will do is that, one second guys. So what the maid will do is that, what are the outsourcing activities that the maid do? So what your maid will do is that, she might have given the activities outsourcing to her maid, she can wash the clothes, she can wash the utensils, then she can clean the house. So these are the few activities which a mom has outsourced. So the company will be able to focus on those activities where it has competency. So if your mom is best at cooking and working at office, so she'll rather focus on that. Okay, and everything else, whatever she doesn't have a good hand, she will outsource it. So likewise, in a company also, you outsource a few things. Like you can outsource your customer inquiries. There will be a company which answers your customer inquiries and all of that. So you can outsource a few activity like that. And then you have your customer service. One second, guys. Yeah. So customer services means your after sales services. Services which you do after selling a product. Your supply chain management does not only end after your product is sold to your end customer. It also extends after that. So you have these after sales services, which improves the relationship between the customer and your company, so that you have your customer services, and also performance measurement. So after you have done your supply chain management as a whole, you will see whether it was done according to your strategy, or were there any changes. If there were changes, what corrective action can you take? All of that you will see in your performance management. Okay. So this is your supply chain management. Oh, I've started recording also. Yes. So you are going to start up with research and development strategies. So we are going to start up with research and development strategies. So research and development strategies. Okay. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. So can anyone tell me what is the research and development department of Google called? You can Google it and also tell me, no problem. So what is the research and development department of Google called? Okay, Leaf, I'll tell you. Yeah, I didn't get any answers. Okay, so the research and development department of Google called is Google X. It is known as Google X. So Google X is the research and development department of Google. Okay. So yes, so always remember, so this is something general knowledge which you guys should possess. Okay. So only being a CA is not going to help you. You'll need to have knowledge of all the businesses and what is going around you, around the world. Okay. So yes, so what research and development department usually does is they develop new products and they also improve their old products. They try to develop new products and they also try to improve their old products. That you must have understood. Yes. So when you bring a research and development policy, or when you bring a research and development strategy in your what do you say, strategy in your company, you know, so there are a few decisions that you will have to take. So there are a few R&D decisions that you will have to take. So what are those few decisions is what we are going to see now. First, you have to see whether you want to do your research and development in your product, or you want to do your research and development in your process. So you can either do a research and development in your product. Say research and development in the product means if you are manufacturing a phone, you can see what more features can you bring in the phone. So that will be a research and development in your phone. Research and development in the process means how you can make your process faster. If your process now takes for manufacturing the phone, if you currently take 5 hours, how can you bring it to 3 to 2 hours? What is the best of technology that you can put in? So these and all is a development in process. Okay. Next, what you have to see is whether your research will be basic or will it be applied. So you can have two categories of research. Okay. So the one category of research you can categorize as hard-working people. The other category of research you can categorize into smart-working people. So basic is hard-working people, whereas applied research is just smart-working people. Okay. So basic research means that you will start your research from the very scratch. You will start your research from a very scratch. Okay. So whereas your applied research means what you will do is that there will be some other company which would have already done this research and development and will have a successful product running in the market. What you will do is you will use that what you will do is you will take that research and development strategy and you will apply it in your firm also. So there will be a applied research which the other firm has already done and already established itself, and now that you will use it in your own firm. Okay. When I'm going to tell you the next few points, I'll also tell you example for this. Next, what you is that whether you want to be a research and development leader or you want to be a research and development follower. Research and development leader means you are researching something new and developing something new and bringing it to the market. So the person who will be the first to bring in 5G network will be a research leader. The person who brings the first COVID vaccine will be a research leader. Who will be a research follower? Who will be a research follower is that now you guys must have heard of GeoMeet. So there are a few allegations that are put on GeoMeet saying that it has completely copied Zoom. Okay, that's completely copied Zoom. Like how you have your Instagram Reels. Okay, so Instagram Reels and the Zoom Meet is a good example for followers in R&D. TikTok has also already done its research and development and brought in something called as a TikTok or a video seeing app. The same what they have did is they have followed the same research and development, and these followers of research and development have brought in something called Reels. Likewise, same GeoMeet has also copied Zoom. So what you do in a followers of research and development is that you take a final product. You take a final product and you then break down that final product to see how it works. So once you understood how the final product works, you will develop the same product. Okay. So that is what is followers in R&D. Then you have robotics or manual type of processes. So in your research and development, you can develop a few processes which can either be done using robotics or you can do it using manual type, and that you can do your research. And on what else you can do your research is that how what amount of money are you going to spend, high, average or low. Then perform R&D within the firm, or are you going to or are you going to do R&D outside the firm. That is, inside the firm means in the firm, in your company itself you have a research and development department and you do your R&D here. Or outside the firm, someone else has you have a R&D which is done like outsourcing, nothing but outsourcing. You outsource your R&D activities. So that decision also you have to take. Then you have to see whether you want to use the work of university researchers or private sector researchers. Who do you want to include in your research and development department? So these are the few decisions which you have to take regarding the research and development. Okay. So yeah, so this is important. What they try to say here is that, so that it is a critical question whether a firm should develop research and development expertise initially or outside the external agencies. So in the above point, I told you that you have to decide whether you want to have a R&D department in-house, or do you want to outsource it, or you want to outsource it. Okay, so whether you have a R&D department in-house or outsource it is going to be very important. Okay, this has also been an examination question. So on what factors will you decide whether you want to have it in-house R&D or whether you want to outsource your R&D? Okay, so now we are going to read a few points in which they are going to help us. They are going to guide us whether we should have a R&D in-house or whether we should have a R&D outsourced. Okay. Yeah, 1 second, guys. I'm feeling a little hungry. I don't have any energy at all. So energy level is really low. Yeah. So yes. So we are going to see whether what we are going to see is whether your technical progress is high or low. Whether your technical progress is high or low, and whether your market growth is high or low. And what is the okay? So these two factors is what is discussed in all the 4 points which are given under this. Okay. So first, what they say is that if your technical progress is very slow, that means the technical changes which is happening in your industry is very slow, and your market growth is also moderate. Okay, your market growth is neither fast nor very slow. Your market growth is moderate. So in such case, what you can do is you can have an in-house R&D. So in such case, you can have an in-house R&D, and also you have a barriers to new entrants. Okay. So a good example to this would be your what you can take your cars. Yeah, you can take the example of your cars and bikes. Okay, in cars and bikes there is not much of a technical change which is coming. The technical change is very slow only. Okay, so once in 5 years or 10 years you have something new which is coming in, and the market growth is also moderate only. You don't have really slow growth also, you don't have really high growth also. There is a moderate market growth in the car sector, and also the new entrance barriers is significant. Okay, there is a lot of barriers for new entrants, right from the huge amount of capital that they have to invest, and also the suppliers they have to find, and all of that. So in such case, you can have an in-house R&D. So the car manufacturing companies can have an in-house R&D, and that will suffice. Okay. So when you have an in-house R&D is that when you have a good time to do research. If you're already okay, so in the next thing we'll see. So this is the only point where it says that you can have an in-house R&D. In all other points and all the remaining 3 points, they only say that you have to have R&D outside the firm. Okay, you have to outsource it. Okay. So what they say in the second point is that technology is rapidly changing, and the market is growing slowly. Technology is changing fast. The market is growing slowly only. So in such case, what will happen is that will you sit and look into your technology which is rapidly changing, or will you be doing your R&D? It is better that you outsource your R&D. Okay. Next is that for a good example for this point would be that the technology is rapidly changing in your mobile phones. Okay. Robotics market is growing slowly only. Yeah, correct. Okay. So another example would be mobile phones. So mobile phones, the technology is changing rapidly. Every year there is some kind of a technological change that is coming in, but your market is growing very slowly. Market is growing very slowly means this mobile phones, you have a huge market, but the growth of the market is very slow. That means we only change our mobile phones every 2 or 3 years, or there are few people only change their mobile phones every 5 years. So in such case, the market is growing very slowly. Okay, the technology is changing slowly and market is growing. Next point, technology is changing slowly, but market is growing quickly. So here also you'll not have enough time for in-house development, so you'll outsource it. then both technical progress and marketing growth are very fast. Then the R&D expertise should be obtained from the acquisition of a well-established firm in the industry, so it must be outsourced. So I hope this is clear whether you should have an in-house. This is something you will have to mug up only. Okay. So for each one, I cannot give you an example. So this you keep in mind. If the technical progress is slow and your market growth is moderate, in such case it will be in-house R&D. In all other cases, outsource it. Okay. Yeah. Next. So you can have a 3 kind of R&D strategies. That is what is written here in this para. So I'll tell you that in the last, if you have time, you'll first complete the human resource strategy. I'm sorry guys, human resource strategy, I woke up today only and I read about it. So I had no time to mark it. So I just put in brackets. Okay. Yeah, it's 7:26, we'll complete it. Okay. So what is human resource? So we are done with R&D. I hope you don't have any doubts in research and development. So next what you have is your human resource strategy. So what is human resource strategy? So human resource, everybody knows that a human, how much ever your technologies keep on changing, human as a human resource is the biggest asset of the firm. Your human resource is the biggest asset of the firm. Why? One main reason I'll give you. Okay, the technology cannot provide you strategies. The strategies which you have to make for the firm will only come from human resource. So because a firm only runs on strategy, we are reading the whole subject about strategic management only. Until now, you must have understood how important a strategy for a company is, a good strategy for companies. So the strategies are formulated only by the human resource, and all the works, at the base level are done by human people only. I mean, human thing only. Even the technological advancement is done by the humans only. If there is no human, there will not be any technological advancement. So human resource is very important in a company, and the strategy for a human resource is even more important than that. Who will be included in human resource in a company? You guys tell me. What other kind of human resources you can see in a company? There will be employees. What else? You'll have your managers, you'll have your workers, you'll have your watchmen and people like that. So all of them are included in your human resource strategy. Okay, all these people are included in your human resource strategy. So what they try to say here is that a well-defined strategic management system can fail. Even though you have the best strategic management system in place, it can still fail if the sufficient attention is not given to the human resource dimension. In the first chapter, I told you, even though in the first or second or in the third chapter, I don't remember, I told you that even though you have the best of strategy, if the management is not sound, or if the management is not responsible, the strategy will still fail. Okay, I gave you the example of Ratan Tata there. Even though Ratan Tata makes 5 acquisitions, if the management is not able to handle those 5 acquisitions, it will go in vain only. Okay, so that is the, I hope you are able to recollect all of these things. Okay, so human resource strategy. So well-designed strategic management system will fail if you don't have a good human resource strategy in place. If you don't have a good human resource strategy in place. Okay. So what they say is that they hear these 3 points they've given. These are the reasons right there. These are the reasons for HR problems. So these are the reasons for HR problems. In human resource, what kind of a problems, or what are the reasons that you have problems in your HR department? First, what they say is that disruption of social and political structure, then failure to match individual aptitudes with implementation tasks, and inadequate top management support for implementation activities. So what they try to say here is that why at the first place you have a human resource problem. So the reasons why you have it, because so there might be times when suppose you are a CA. Okay, suppose you are a CA and you go get appointed yourself into an organization. Okay, but what happens is that the salary you get from the organization is only 10,000 or 20,000. Will you be happy? Is this why you have read the course for 5 years? This is one of the rarest courses and one of the most difficult courses You can read, and in this course itself, if you are studying, you are getting 10,000 to 20,000. It is equal to someone who has studied BCom. What will you be satisfied? Will you still want to work in the company? No, right? So in such case, that will be a failure of human resource. So if you're employing a human resource in your company, you must be able to keep them satisfied. The same way, they are giving you the best of salary. Okay, they are giving you the best of salary. They are giving you 80,000, 90,000, or 1 lakh salary per month. But what they say is that you are a chartered accountant, but still the job that you have to do is what you have to do is you have to do only cleaning of the organization. You have to come every morning, you have to broom the whole organization, you have to mop the whole organization, you have to clean all the windows and go. That is the CA vacancy that we have. You can come do all these and we'll still give you 1 lakh rupees. Even though you are getting, there might be a few people for whom money will be everything. But for your internal satisfaction and for your internal happiness, you'll not be happy doing all those works, okay? Because that is not why you have studied at the first place. Even though you're getting the best of salary, you will want to use your brain somewhere. Okay, so this is why you can have human resource problem also. So that is what is disruption of social and political structures. So if there is a structure in which a CA should be appointed, in that structure only CA should be appointed. So if individual aptitude, so there might be a failure of individual aptitude with implementation tasks. So you will have a good amount of aptitude, but you'll be given a peon jobs, a peon boy's job. That won't work. Inadequate top management support for implementation activities. Okay, so for this, what did I tell you? Yeah, suppose the top management should also support you in implementing the activities of human resource level. Okay, so if you are going to enter into a firm and you are going to enter into as an article, if the firm must tell you how to prepare a balance sheet, how to vouch and verify, then only you'll be able to understand. So in such case, you'll have human resource problems which can be which should be kept in mind and should be avoided. Okay. Yeah. Next, what you have is 1 second, guys. Yeah. Next, what you have is the functions of HR. Next, what you have is the functions of HR. So, what are the functions of HR? So, what a human resource department does in an organization is you guys, I hope you guys know what HR department is. So first thing what they do is they recruit and select. So once they have selected the employees, they give training to the employees, and once the training is given to the employees, they do the appraisal of performance. Appraisal of performance means they identified if there is any performance deficiencies. That means if the employee is not working properly, or are not competent enough for the organization, they try to see what can be done and what can be given to them, any extra coaching or any training, or what can be done to solve these deficiencies. They'll see that will what be done in appraisal of performance. So once that is done, you will be given compensation. Compensation is nothing but your salary and all of that. Okay. So you must give the best of salary. It's not like you appoint a CA and get all the work done from him, and you only do 10,000 and you only give them 10,000 to 20,000 rupees of salary. This won't work. Okay. So compensation is very important. Okay. So yes. So if you read this and all, you'll be able to understand. That's why I'm not explaining you in depth. So next, what we have is so we are towards the end. Just 10 more minutes, we'll be able to complete this. Yeah, I'll take a minute break, guys. I'm really low on energy today, that's why. Yeah, until this, are you guys clear? You only have 2 more paras left, that's it. The chapter is going to complete. So until this in the chapter, do you guys have any difficulties? Everything clear? Yeah, okay. Oh, I hope you guys had your morning coffee or morning tea. So you guys are also energized. Don't please, after the session, don't go and sleep. Once take your book. I know this is a very big chapter. At least whatever I have marked, that you can go and read through. Okay. Also, a few people asked me that we are finding it really boring to read with the book. Had your coffee, nice, huh? I'm here teaching. I didn't have my coffee. Sitting there listening, you had your coffee. Okay. So you guys told me that you have a problem with reading the ICI textbook. Trust me, I am taking the chapter. Okay, I am teaching you guys. I myself have not read the whole chapter in detail. Okay, wherever I have found important, only I've taken up that and I've read it, because I know there is a lot of text. Because as I'm a student just like you, I know what difficulty you guys will be facing. So don't worry at all. After after some time, probably before exams or before a month before, or even maybe whenever I find time, because there are a few lectures that have been not recorded. So first I have to record that, then I have to sit and edit everything. So after once everything is done, I'm not doing my articles now. I have only completed my first group. Even with you guys, I'm also going to write my strategic paper in my coming November attempt. Okay. I didn't prepare for my second group. So yes, what I was telling is I'm writing my second group in November. Yeah. So what was I saying? I forget. Yeah. So what you can do is you can once you can read through whatever is given in the chapter. Okay. Whatever I've marked, and the lectures will be uploaded on YouTube. The strategic management. Now I hope I do it as soon as possible. Once they are uploaded, what you can do is once a month or twice a month, you can go through all the lectures. You can have these lectures will be of 20 to 25 hours. Okay, 20 hours only, not more than that. 20 hours it will be. So you can take a day or a 2 days time, and you can sit and complete your strategic management at one go. So if you're going to listen to my lectures alone, you'll be able to crack this paper of strategic management. Okay, so we'll move on to the chapter now. Strategic, next what you have is, one second. Yeah, next what you have is strategic human resource management. Strategic human resource management. Okay, what happened? Yeah. So strategic human resource management, what they say here is that strategic human resource management may be defined as the linking of, they link something here, linking of human resource management with strategic goals and objectives to improve business performance and develop organizational culture, and that fosters innovation and flexibility. Oh my God. Yes. So what they have said here is that, yeah, so there might be a goal in the organization. You will have a goal in the organization. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to link your goal and your human resource. So only when your human resources know about the goal very well, they will be able to try to achieve the goal. If there is a person who is working under my company, if they don't know what I'm trying to achieve, if they don't know my vision or mission, how will they be able to give a good performance? They'll not be able to, right? Also, that is very important that what your organization is also trying to fulfill the goals of an individual, whereas your employee in return will fulfill the goals of your organization. So what happens here is that the employee will be working very hard to fulfill the goals of organization. There will be some those sincere employees in the organization. Okay, but in turn, the organization is not looking at the employee's goal at all. Suppose the employee's goal at an individual level is that he want to learn a lot from the company, or he wants a good compensation from the company. So the company must also hear the goals of employees, and the employee must also hear the goals of the company, so that they are able to provide a better product to the market. So yeah, so strategic human resource management may be defined as a linkage of human resource management with the strategic goals and objectives of the business to improve the performance. I just told you what it means. Okay, next what you have is the human resource management practice. So next what you have is what is your HR strategy. So we are going to read about the human resource strategy now. So what is a human resource strategy is that the human resource management practices of an organization may be important source of competitive advantage. So what kind of human resources strategy practices you have in your organization can also be a competitive advantage to you. How can a human resource management be a competitive advantage to a firm? So suppose you can take the example of Google. You can take the example of, oh my God. Yeah, so you can take the example of Google. So whoever would have heard of Google must know that they have the best human resource practices available in Google. So it is a dream company. When the first time I heard about the human resource practices that are in Google, it really became a dream company to work in. So what they have is that, it's the best for the people who are like us. So they also, so what, I'll just give you a few activities they have. So, they have this, when you enter, no, and usually in organization, they will have staircase to enter. They'll have staircase to enter to, or elevators to move from one place to another. In Google company, they have slides, like how in your amusement park you have slides to go from one place to another, like that in your Google company, you have slides to move from one place to another. So that is something which gets the employees excited. So anything which is related to human, okay, that one thing. And they also have a very very large cafeteria. Okay. And also I heard that you get a lot of things there for free. Okay, so you can go and munch on anything you want whenever you like. So you don't have also restrictions on when you have to go to the canteen or not, like that. And then also there was another thing. Yeah. So you have this massage room also. Okay, where you if you want to go and feel relaxed, you can go to the massage room and get your massages done. You can have your relaxation done. Then also, I think all of these are for free only there. Also, what else you have? There's this thing. You have this something known as games room. So whenever you're getting bored of work, you can go and play games and get refreshed. So this, when you see this, you truly understand Google, that Google actually cares for its human resource. Okay, so a company won't have games you would have mostly not seen any company which would have a games thing in their company. Why? Because the company thinks, say if an employee is going to work from morning till night in the organization, what Google company thinks is that even if I don't want a company I don't want a person in my company or a human resource in my company who is working inefficiently for 10 hours. Okay, rather he may work 10 hours and be inefficient, or what he can do is he may work for 3 hours, but he can be the most efficient of the person he can be. So to increase the efficiency of the persons, if you are getting bored, if you go play games and come, you will get energized and all of that. So that is what Google does. Okay, so you guys can go on YouTube or Google and research about this, or I'll send a video in the group after the session gets over. Please do watch it. That will become your dream company to work in after you understand how Google actually works. What was I saying? I just got diverted with the example. Yeah, so this is a competitive advantage that Google has built. So everybody in the world, not everybody, most of the people in the world, wants to go and work in Google. So that is a good advantage. So, the best of human resources, the most intelligent of people, the most efficient of people want to go and work in the Google. So that is a competitive advantage, that they have the best of human resource. That's why they are able to be the number one company. Okay. Yes. So the following for strategic focus should be given on the points here. Yeah. So what they're trying to say is that in short, when you appoint a human resource, what are the things that you have to keep in mind? First is the pre-selection practices. So pre-selection practices means that you will have to say, suppose you want to select the article. There is a student who you want to select for articleship in your company. What you can do is that you have to first do pre-selection practices. What is pre-selection practices is that you must first see how much human resource, how much article students you have to take into your company. What must be the eligibility criteria of the article student, whether they must have completed one group or two group in how many attempts, or will it be based on the knowledge that they have. So this pre-selection practices you have to do. After you're done with pre-selection practices, you have to do your selection practices. What does selection practices means? It means staff various positions in an organization. You have to recruit those people. Okay, so both recruitment and selection policies and procedures should be designed keeping in view the mission and purpose of the organization. So the selection practices which you do must be in relation to your must be in relation to your vision and mission of the organization. Okay, so the people who you are going to select must be able to. Are you guys able to hear some background noise? Is it disturbing? Yes. These crows. Okay, wait, I'll try to close my windows. I'll come back. Okay, I hope the voice has reduced, So yes, so the selection practices, according to that, you have to select the people in your organization. So after the post-selection, what you have to do is you have to maintain and improve the workers' job performance. So how Google company brought in some policies like you can play games and all of that. That is your post-selection practices. So how you're going to have your employee how your employee you're going to have your employee working efficiently in the organization, and how are you going to train them, and all of that is going to come under your post selection practices. So these are the three practices. Then you have the strategic role of HR manager. So if you are appointed, suppose in future any one of us can be appointed as a HR manager also. So if you're appointed as a HR manager, what will be your role? What will be your role is what we are going to study now. So I'll complete this by just giving you like a quick overview of everything. You can then sit down and study this in detail. Okay. So HR manager role. So what will be your role is that you will have to first one is that providing purposeful direction. So what does providing purposeful direction means? That so the task of an HR manager is to ensure that the objectives of an organization are internalized by each individual working. So each individual who is working in the organization, so each individual who is working in the organization must know what the company's objective is. Okay, so that it will provide a direction to the employee in which direction it has to work. So it will provide a purposeful direction. Next, so a human, in that case, a human resource manager, what he should do is that he must be able to lead people and lead the organization towards the desired destination where the organization wants to head. Then building core competency means you have to build something which is of your unique strength. You must build something which is your core competence or which is your unique strength, okay, which may not be shared by others. So human resource management has a great role in building such unique strength in an organization. How you can, when you study this, you'll be able to learn. Okay, next is creating competitive advantage. So the same thing only, okay. So you'll have to create a HR manager can help in a firm creating a competitive advantage by hiring employees which are of the utmost competitive employees they can hire. So if you are hiring the most competitive, most intelligent, or the most efficient of employees, you will be creating a competitive advantage in your company. Then facilitation of change. So what happens is that there might be a lot of changes which are continuously coming in an organizational environment. So HR manager plays an important role in implementing those changes or helping people adapt with the changes in the organization. So what happens is that if there is a change coming, a technological change coming, the human resource manager should conduct a workshop, and by making so that employees are able to understand what the technological changes. So he must help employees in the facilitation of change. Okay. Next is that managing workforce diversity. So in an organization, there will be different kind of workforce. There will be male, there will be female, there will be young people, there will be old people, there will be people from South India, North India, Eastern India and Western India. There will be people who are uneducated, who are educated. There will be people who are unskilled, who that is the tea boy or the watchman or people like that. There will be professional employees also. There will be people from different caste, different religion, different nationalities. So it's a huge diversity in the workforce in an organization. So what you must do is that you must be able to manage. Mute yourself. Okay. So you must be able to manage such a huge diverse workforce, which is actually a challenge for HR manager. Okay. So he must be so skilled that he is able to manage all of these people. Okay. Next is that empowerment of human resource. So empowerment of human resource means you must try to let the human resources give the ability to them to make decisions. Okay. So empowerment means authorizing every member of an organization to take up his or her own destiny, realizing his or her full potential. So only when a human resource is able to take decisions on his own, or is able to give. So you can take the example of Google. Okay, in that Google firm, the employees decide at what time they want to work, at what time they want to play, at what time they want to chill, at what time they can give their full potential. So you will empower your human resources. So if you go and talk to a human resource from a Google company, they'll be the most empowered one, because they know what their whole potential is, because they have. So when you only know what your full potential is, you'll be able to give the best to the organization. So the decision making powers the organization should give to their human resources, that is empowerment of human resources. Last is development of work ethic and culture. So work ethic and culture means that so Google has a very vibrant culture, okay, in which it promotes trust and creativity. It has put a full trust on the employee that even though we are giving you so much freedom, you will work at the best of terms and you will be really creative. Okay, a meeting is going to end anyway. This is the last point. If the meeting ends, you'll just quit it. Okay. Yeah. So that is what is work ethics and culture. So you will have to create a good culture in the organization. It must be not like a bad. If you enter a organization, it must give you good vibes. There must not be all the employees who are gossiping and or not, or only chilling, not doing work. That must not be a work culture. Your work culture will be the best. Why do you want to go into big fours? If for an articleship, why do you guys want to go into big fours? Because the work culture there is really good. Okay. So yeah, that is all about your work ethics and culture. So yes guys,